They ruled an empire without a name. No thrones, no tombs, no written chronicles, only silent cities carved in dust. The Indus kings vanished, leaving behind whispers buried beneath time. Chapter 1. The Empire. Without a name. The wind still carries the dust of forgotten cities. Harappa, Mohenjo-Daro, Dolavira, names that sound more like echoes than memories. Here, 5,000 years ago, rose a civilization so vast, so perfectly organized, that historians once refused to believe it could exist without kings. But the Indus Valley defied every rule of empire. There are no pyramids piercing the sky, no royal tombs, no inscriptions glorifying divine rulers. Only quiet streets, straight as arrows, and houses built with astonishing uniformity, each brick following a precise mathematical proportion. It was a city for the people, not a palace for the few. Yet behind this order there must have been vision, someone or something guiding it all. From the banks of the Indus River, the civilization spread like a living organism, branching into hundreds of cities and trading outposts, stretching across what is now Pakistan, India, and Afghanistan. And still, it bore no single name. We call it the Indus civilization because of the river that nourished it, but to its own people, it was probably something else, something now lost to the silence of time. The Indus people were builders of balance. Their cities were neither chaotic nor grandiose. They were efficient, precise, and eerily calm. Underground drainage systems ran beneath their homes, a level of civic design unmatched for 2,000 years afterward. Public baths stood at the heart of their cities, perhaps sacred places of ritual purity. But what's most striking is what's missing. No statues of kings, no weapons of conquest, no evidence of great wars or divine tyranny. The Indus seemed to have ruled without ruling. Who, then, held the power? Some believe they were governed by councils, a collective rule, not a monarchy. Others whisper of priest-kings, spiritual figures who led not by force but by faith. And there are those who say it was the system itself, the city, the trade, the ritual, that ruled, not men. A civilization run by order, not by ego. When archaeologists first unearthed Mohenjo-Daro in the early 20th century, they expected to find a ruler's palace. Instead, they found a city of equals. Each home had its own well, its own bathroom, its own system for waste disposal. It was as if every citizen shared the same dignity, a rare concept in the ancient world. Imagine the drone of daily life here, the hum of craftsmen carving beads from carnelian stone, the rhythm of pottery wheels turning, the scent of baked bricks drying under the sun. Merchants traded goods across the seas, cotton, metals, spices, reaching as far as Mesopotamia. And still, not one record tells us who commanded this trade, who managed the order. The empire ran like a machine, but the engineers remain unseen. Perhaps that was their secret. Perhaps power in the Indus world was meant to be invisible. In a time when every other empire built monuments to the ego, the Indus built monuments to function. They didn't crave remembrance. They craved perfection. Their silence was not weakness. It was design. And yet, this silence would be their curse. Because when the rivers changed course, when the monsoons failed, and when the cities began to die, there were no written prayers, no royal decrees, no rescue from a throne. Only silence, spreading through the streets like dust. The nameless empire faded just as it had lived, quietly, efficiently, and without kings. Today, we stand before their ruins, symmetrical, ghostly, haunting, and we realize something profound. Perhaps greatness doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it builds, thrives, and vanishes, leaving behind only patterns of perfection and the mystery of those who never needed a crown. This was the empire without a name, the silent power that shaped the earliest heart of civilization. And though the Indus kings are forgotten, their cities still speak, in brick, in symmetry, in the rhythm of ancient order. We only need to listen. Chapter 2. The City of Hidden Crowns. They left no thrones, yet their authority is written in stone. Scattered across the ruins of the Indus are thousands of tiny seals, etched with animals, symbols, and a script no one can read. These seals are the only voices of their world, each one small enough to fit in a palm, yet powerful enough to hint at an empire's mind. Archaeologists believe these seals were not ornaments, but signatures, tokens of identity, ownership, or divine protection. Some bear the image of a powerful bull, its horns curved like the crescent moon. Others show a meditating figure, seated in deep stillness, surrounded by animals, perhaps a proto-form of a god, or a king cloaked in divinity. The Indus people spoke through symbols, not words. Imagine the hands that carved these seals, steady, disciplined, working in silence, every line precise, every symbol deliberate. The language they wrote remains undeciphered to this day, mocking every scholar who tries to give voice to its silence. And yet, through that silence, we sense structure, patterns, order. This was no chaos of artisans. It was a system, a bureaucracy, perhaps even a kingdom, hidden behind symbols. At the heart of Mohenjo-Daro lies the great citadel, an elevated mound built with layers of baked brick. It towers above the rest of the city, silent yet commanding. From here, perhaps, the unseen rulers watched over their world. No palace remains, but the very architecture whispers hierarchy, ritual baths for the chosen few, granaries for collective wealth, and assembly halls where decisions might have echoed once upon a time. But if kings ruled here, why hide? Why erase their own faces from history? Some historians suggest the Indus civilization was a technocracy, led not by monarchs, but by master planners and priests. To them, power was sacred, not personal. A city was not built to glorify a man, but to maintain cosmic balance, what later Indian philosophy would call Rita, the natural order. And so, their rulers may have seen themselves as guardians, not conquerors. Their crowns were invisible because their rule was internal, spiritual, systemic, unseen. Still, not everyone agrees. A few rare artifacts suggest otherwise: miniature figurines wearing elaborate headdresses, tiny thrones carved in ivory, and ornaments made of gold. Were these symbols of royal privilege, or simply ritual attire of high priests? We do not know. What we do know is that this civilization understood power differently. It was dispersed, shared, embedded in ritual, trade, and daily life. Trade itself might have been their true throne. From here, ships sailed westward to Mesopotamia, carrying beads, cotton, and precious stones. Mesopotamian tablets even mention a distant land called Meluha, believed to be the Indus Valley. And in those records, foreign merchants describe Meluhan envoys arriving with cargo and seals representing their leaders. If envoys existed, there must have been authority behind them. Hidden kings, perhaps, ruling not with swords, but with symbols and commerce. As night falls over the ruins, one can almost picture it. The flicker of torches in the citadel, the faint echo of rituals, the sound of seals being pressed into wet clay, marking ownership, power, legitimacy. and somewhere, unseen in the shadows, the face of a ruler who chose silence over glory. In a world obsessed with monuments and conquest, the Indus kings chose anonymity. Their crowns were not of gold, but of geometry. Their power was not shouted, but designed. And though history forgot their names, their fingerprints remain, pressed into every brick, every seal, every perfect angle of the cities they left behind. This was the city of hidden crowns, an empire that ruled not through fear, but through order. Their silence wasn't absence, it was intention. Because sometimes the greatest power is the one that never needs to be seen. Chapter 3. The Voice of the Seals. They left behind no scrolls, no royal decrees, no carved monuments of victory. Only symbols, hundreds of them, pressed into tiny stone seals, like whispers from a forgotten tongue. These were the letters of an unknown language, the voice of a civilization that refused to die, yet never chose to speak clearly. The Indus script, a puzzle of elegant simplicity, appears on pottery, tools, ornaments, and trade seals. Each inscription is only a few characters long, often accompanied by animals: a unicorn, a bull, an elephant, a tiger. They seem to speak of identity, authority, perhaps divinity. But their meaning has been lost for more than 4,000 years. When British archaeologists first uncovered these seals, they believed they had found the administrative code of an ancient kingdom, like the cuneiform of Mesopotamia or the hieroglyphs of Egypt. But every attempt to read it ended in silence. Unlike other ancient scripts, the Indus writing offers no bilingual Rosetta Stone to guide us, no parallel text to unlock its grammar. The signs seem to dance between language and art, too brief to be speech, too deliberate to be decoration. Yet the seals persist, whispering their riddles. Each one carries the same discipline, the same pattern, suggesting an organized authority behind their creation. Someone dictated what symbols could be used, how they would appear, and what they would mean. That someone, or something, was the voice of governance. If there were kings, perhaps their names were hidden in these symbols, buried in clay, waiting for the right mind to hear them again. In 1929, an archaeologist named Ernest Mackay discovered a seal depicting a horned figure seated cross-legged, surrounded by animals. Some called him Proto-Shiva, the first form of the Hindu god. Others believed he might be a priest-king, a ruler who bridged the world of man and spirit. The seal was small, yet heavy with mystery. Was this the image of a divine ruler, or simply the emblem of belief? The debate continues, as the seal keeps its secret. Modern scholars have tried every method: linguistic analysis, AI pattern recognition, statistical decoding. None have succeeded. The script remains mute. Some even question whether it is a language at all, perhaps a system of symbols used for trade or ritual or social control. But silence doesn't mean emptiness, it means depth. Because silence was sacred to the Indus. Their cities spoke through order, their seals spoke through symbols. They didn't write history to be remembered, they built history to be lived. And maybe that is why their script resists translation. It wasn't meant for us. It was meant for the initiated, those who understood the rhythm of water, brick, and ritual. In the ruins of Harappa, one particular discovery stands out: a set of seals found together in what appears to be an administrative quarter. Each bears a variation of similar signs, arranged with geometric precision. It looks like a record, perhaps of trade or authority, the fingerprints of an invisible empire. The seals were tools of legitimacy, Whoever held them had power. And if power existed, then so did hierarchy. The Indus kings may have worn no crowns, but their marks ruled over every transaction, every exchange, every ritual. Picture this: a merchant kneeling before a scribe, offering his goods, a seal pressed into soft clay, leaving behind a sacred pattern, the invisible signature of a kingdom that refused to name itself. No royal proclamation, no divine inscription, only a symbol, clean and eternal. Perhaps this was how they spoke to their gods, their people, their rulers. Through geometry, through silence, through perfection. Even now, deep beneath layers of dust, more seals wait to be found, each one a frozen word in an unreadable story. And until we decode them, the kings of the Indus will remain both everywhere and nowhere, their voices trapped inside stones, whispering in a language time itself has forgotten. This was their voice, not written in books, but etched in eternity. The voice of the seals, the speech of silence. Chapter 4. Across the rivers of trade. The Indus kings may have been silent, but their ships were not. They sailed beyond the horizon, across the Arabian Sea, carrying with them the mark of an empire that refused to speak, yet made the world listen. Thousands of years ago, long before the Silk Road and long before empires rose in Persia, there was another kind of highway, a river highway. The Indus flowed from the mountains, winding through fertile plains, feeding cities and dreams. Its waters carried not just life, but trade, beads, copper, ivory, shells, and cotton. Treasures that spoke of a civilization rich, organized, and deeply connected. At the western edge of this silent world stood the port city of Lothal. Archaeologists believe it once held one of the world's first docks, a rectangle of stone where ships rested, waiting for the tides to rise. From here, merchants loaded goods bound for distant lands, the shores of Arabia, the city-states of Mesopotamia, the great ports of Sumer and Akkad. The Indus merchants were not conquerors. They ruled through commerce, not swords. And their seals, small, carved, and perfect, served as passports across the seas. Far away in Mesopotamia, clay tablets tell of a mysterious land called Meluha. The scribes of Ur and Lagash wrote of Meluhan ships arriving at their harbors, bringing lapis lazuli, carnelian beads, and fine cotton, goods found nowhere else. They spoke of Meluhan merchants, Meluhan translators, even Meluhan villages within their cities. It was as if two ancient worlds, the Indus and Mesopotamia, had met across the waters, bound by trade and trust. But who sent these merchants? Who organized the fleets that crossed dangerous seas, guided only by the stars and the rhythm of the wind? Trade on this scale required order, leadership, and diplomacy. Perhaps these were the unseen kings, the merchant rulers of the Indus, commanding through networks instead of armies. Their authority was the river itself, their power measured in the weight of goods and the trust of distant lands. Visualize it: a twilight harbor, ships of baked wood rocking gently in the current, torches flickering against the dark water. Men speak in soft voices, exchanging seals, weighing cargo, copper ingots, ivory combs, jars of oil. A priest marks the transaction with a clay tablet. A seal is pressed, and the deal is done. No king's name is spoken, yet the invisible law of the Indus governs all. It wasn't just trade, it was diplomacy. In Mesopotamian tablets, we find hints of royal exchanges, exotic gifts sent from Meluha to the lords of Sumer, gold ornaments, spices, animals, perhaps even envoys carrying messages between two worlds. If these records are true, then the Indus kings weren't lost. They were simply hidden behind the symbols of their merchants. Their rule extended not by force, but through networks of trust that stretched from river to sea. But then, as centuries passed, the connections faded, the rivers shifted, the docks silted up, and the trade routes vanished into sand. The Mesopotamian scribes wrote their last note about Meluha. And then, silence. No more ships, no more merchants, no more seals. It was as if the sea itself swallowed the memory of an empire. And yet, even today, fragments remain. Indus-style seals found in Iraq, Mesopotamian beads unearthed in Pakistan. Artifacts that prove these two worlds once touched, traded, and perhaps even dreamed together. They stand as whispers of a time when kings ruled not from thrones, but from the flow of rivers and tides. The Indus kings may have vanished, but their influence drifted far beyond their homeland. In the ancient ports of Mesopotamia, when merchants saw a seal from Meluha, they saw quality, order, and trust, the signature of a civilization that mastered silence but spoke fluently in trade. This was the empire's true voice, not written in stone, but carried on the waves. An empire without borders, without kings, but with purpose. The rivers were their roads, the oceans their allies, and through them the forgotten kings of the Indus ruled not by conquest, but by connection. Chapter 5. The Vanishing Kingdoms. Every civilization believes it will last forever, but the Indus kings, if they existed, learned that even silence cannot escape time. Once their rivers ruled the land. The Indus and its sister streams, the Ravi, Sutlej, and Ghaggar, flowed like veins of life across the plains. Cities thrived beside them: Mohenjo-Daro, Harappa, Dholavira, Lothal. Each city pulsed with trade, order, and ritual harmony. And then, the rivers began to die. It started quietly. The rains grew weaker, the floods less frequent. The mighty Saraswati River, revered in ancient hymns, began to vanish, swallowed by desert sands. The earth dried, the wells ran shallow, and the proud cities began to crumble from within. No army attacked them. No empire rose to conquer them. It was the sky itself that turned against them. Archaeologists studying the layers of Harappa found signs of slow abandonment. Streets once swept clean, now filled with debris. Pottery left half-fired, wells left uncovered. Families didn't flee in panic. They drifted away, one generation after another, as if the land itself was whispering, "Go." Some moved eastward toward the Ganges plains, carrying with them fragments of their language, their gods, their memories. Others vanished entirely, leaving their brick cities to the silence of the wind. And just like that, the greatest urban civilization of the ancient world disappeared, without war, without rebellion, without farewell. No smoke on the horizon, no last stand of kings, only dust and emptiness. The mystery of their fall has haunted generations. Was it climate change? Was it the shifting of tectonic plates that changed the course of rivers? Or was it human, the slow exhaustion of soil, the collapse of trade, the loss of unity? Some historians even speak of migrations from the north, nomadic tribes pushing southward, their arrival perhaps hastening the end. But the truth is simpler and sadder. The Indus didn't fall. It faded. Imagine it. A once bustling street in Mohenjo-Daro, where merchants sold carnelian beads and priests performed rituals at dawn. Now the wind blows through broken walls. The wells are dry, the granaries empty. A child's toy lies buried in dust, a wheel that will never turn again. This is how a kingdom dies when nature decides its time is over. Yet even in their decline, the Indus people left something remarkable. No signs of destruction, no mass graves, no burnt layers of conquest. They didn't fight each other. They simply adapted, scattered, transformed. Perhaps their descendants became the early farmers and traders of the Ganges Valley, carrying with them echoes of a lost world. Perhaps their gods evolved into new forms, their philosophies into early Vedic thought. The river changed, but the memory of the river lived on. And so the kings, if they ever ruled, were forgotten, not by force, but by the passage of time itself. Their seals, their cities, their silence, all buried beneath layers of silt and myth. Even their names dissolved, like salt in water. Only the architecture remained, a pattern too perfect to be accidental, too human to be divine. Today, satellites trace the ghost lines of their vanished rivers. The dry beds still snake across the desert, marking where life once flourished. And deep below, the ruins of their cities rest, unbroken, unburnt, timeless. They wait, not for discovery, but for remembrance. The Indus kings didn't fall in battle. They were outlived by the earth they once mastered. Their crowns turned to clay, their cities to dust. But their silence endures, proof that not all empires end in fire. Some simply fade, quietly, beautifully, into the folds of time. This was their fall, not a collapse, but a vanishing. The kingdom dissolved into nature, and the rivers reclaimed their children. The world moved on, and the Indus slipped into legend. Chapter 6. The Shadow Kings of History. History remembers those who shout their names into stone. But the Indus kings, if they ever ruled, whispered theirs into water, and water forgets. For centuries, scholars have tried to answer one haunting question. Who ruled the Indus? Was it an empire of kings or a kingdom without one? Every ruin, every seal, every artifact seems to point to power, yet none shows its face. Some say the rulers of the Indus were priest kings, guardians of both faith and order. They were not warriors, but mediators between man and the divine. The famous Priest King statue from Mohenjo-Daro, its calm eyes, its dignified robe, its meditative expression, has become a symbol of this idea. But even that sculpture offers no certainty. Is it truly a king, or simply a portrait of belief? Others imagine a council of elders, a kind of proto-democracy, a civilization governed not by a single crown, but by a shared vision of harmony and law. After all, the evidence fits. No palaces towering over the poor, no fortresses defending a throne, no monuments screaming of conquest. Instead, an astonishing equality, the same urban design, the same brick size, the same order repeated from city to city. Such unity cannot exist without leadership, but it may not have needed a monarch. Perhaps power flowed horizontally, not vertically. Then there are those who see something deeper, a civilization ruled by ritual, not rulers. The Indus people may have believed the universe itself was the king, their laws, their designs, their trade, all reflections of cosmic order. The Great Bath, the seals, the symmetry, all point to a society obsessed not with domination, but with balance. To them, to rule might have meant to maintain equilibrium between human and divine, chaos and harmony, earth and water. And yet, whispers of hierarchy persist. Artifacts of gold and precious stones found in limited areas suggest wealth and privilege. Some houses were larger, their drainage more complex, their walls thicker. Perhaps not all were equal. Maybe there was a ruling class, a quiet elite who led through knowledge and ritual, not fear. Their power didn't roar, it resonated. If these shadow kings existed, their rule was unlike anything the ancient world had seen. No temples crowned the skyline. No armies carved emblems of victory. Their strength came from unseen networks, trade, faith, order. Their crowns were invisible because their authority was collective. They didn't rule over their people. They ruled through them. Imagine a council at dusk gathered beside the great bath. The sound of water, the scent of burning resin, the glow of lamps reflected on stone. Priests, elders, merchants, scholars, deciding together how the city would breathe, how trade would flow, how balance would remain. No king raises his voice, no scribe records his name, and yet the city obeys. A kingdom guided not by command, but by consensus. To the modern mind, it sounds impossible, but maybe that's why it worked. Maybe the Indus didn't need kings because they had order. Maybe they didn't need monuments because their legacy was the system itself, so perfect, so complete, that it left no trace of ego. And when their cities fell silent, history mistook their humility for disappearance. But in truth, they left behind a blueprint for civilization itself. Urban planning, sanitation, equality, peace. While others built pyramids to glorify their rulers, the Indus built cities to serve their people. Perhaps these were the true shadow kings, not men of gold, but of principle. Rulers who ruled without ruling, who believed the highest form of power was harmony. And though their names are gone, their wisdom still flows beneath us. In the grids of our cities, the order of our laws, the rhythm of our lives. The Indus kings did not die. They dissolved into history itself, becoming the quiet architects of civilization. Chapter 7. Legacy in Silence. Time buries names, but not ideas. The kings of the Indus may have vanished, their cities turned to dust, their rivers to memory, yet their spirit never truly died. Everywhere in South Asia, their legacy breathes, quietly, invisibly, like the rhythm of an old song the world forgot how to sing. The grid lines of modern cities, the wells that dot every courtyard, the love for order and ritual. These are not inventions of our age. They are echoes of an ancient intelligence. Long before Rome built aqueducts or Athens spoke of democracy, the people of the Indus had already mastered the art of living together, clean, organized, and equal. Their cities were not built for glory, they were built for balance. And that balance still lives in us. Look closer. In the rituals of purification before prayer, in the belief that water is sacred, in the quiet symmetry of a village plan. The Indus left behind no scripture, but their philosophy flows through culture. A belief in harmony, in community, in the unseen thread that binds all life together. Perhaps that's why they never carved the faces of their kings, because they believed power was not a person, but a principle, a collective force that flowed like the river, changing shape, yet always present. Even the languages of this land carry their shadow. Linguists find traces of ancient Indus words hidden deep in modern tongues. Their symbols, unreadable yet familiar, reappear in folk patterns, temple motifs, and sacred geometry. It's as if the Indus script never vanished. It evolved into design, into rhythm, into art. And though we can't read their words, we can still understand their silence. A silence that speaks of humility, discipline, and peace. In a world that worships noise, they built a civilization upon quiet perfection. Today, when satellites map the ghost lines of their rivers, when archaeologists dust off fragments of their seals, we are not just uncovering history, we are remembering ourselves. Because the Indus is not just a civilization we lost, it's a civilization we became. The spirit of the Indus flows through every city that values order, every community that seeks balance, every faith that honors water, and every mind that believes in the unseen logic of the universe. Their kings may be forgotten, but their silence remains eternal. A reminder that greatness does not always roar. Sometimes it breathes. Sometimes it builds quietly, lasts quietly, and disappears quietly, leaving behind not ruins but wisdom. So when you walk through the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro or Harappa, listen carefully. The wind still carries their voice, not of conquest or crown, but of connection, creation, and calm. The Indus still speaks, not in words, not in symbols, but in silence. And that silence is their legacy.